Director Wagner, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Man, I am great. I'm so excited to have you here. The first time I thought that it was going to be possible to get you on here, I was talking to the director of Energy and Mineral Resources, the one directly preceding Callie Younger. And then later that week, I also had Lieutenant Governor Scott Bedke on, and he was like, I can get him in this. Well, he was actually sitting in this chair. But the point is, like, I could get him. I'm like, hell yeah. INL.
He texted me like right after that.
Did he? You're a man of your word, Scott Bedke, yes. Lieutenant Governor. INL has been one of those things. Like, there have been a lot of aha moments in my time since moving to Idaho, and God bless every second of being here. But understanding more of what INL does and really getting a feel for it is like, whoa, I had no idea. And funny enough, first time I went by INL, went to Redfish, and then my wife and I and my boys, we cut over to Rigby to do a water polo tournament, and we went past INL and, you know, went through Arco, and we're like, oh, the Atomic City, like, oh, so cool, you know, like, oh, Craters of the Moon's that way. And then all of a sudden it was like, don't stop at the side of the road. It's like everything clears out. Then you see, you know, big INL signs. You're like, wait, what's out here? Like, what's going on here? And that's when you realize, like, hey, there's real, serious, nationally relevant research that has been going on in that desert for like the last 75 years, groundbreaking things that the rest of the nation and sometimes the world rely on. And it's right in the backyard, right? Like, and most people don't ever go out there. Listen, I know you do a lot of things. Nuclear was obviously one of the things that led to the creation of Idaho National Labs. We find ourselves now as a country needing power more than we ever have. Talk to me about INL and nuclear.
Okay, absolutely.
I mean, that's a big one, but
yeah, and it's clear you already know a lot. But yeah, so INL, its origin traces back to, I don't want to give you like the boring part, but you know, it traces back to 1949 when we had not harnessed atomic energy. You know, ARCO just celebrated, by the way, their 70th anniversary, or we celebrated the 70th anniversary of ARCO being powered by nuclear power. And so the whole site's origin is about demonstrating nuclear power. And then, of course, now we have a commercial industry where 20% of our electricity in this country is coming from nuclear power. And one of the things that was sort of interesting to me when I moved here is how few people understood what was right there in their backyard, that kind of the premise of your question, and all the work that we do and why it's so relevant. That's why I love opportunities like this to talk about the laboratory and what we're doing. And then, as you know, and I'm sure we're going to get into, what's happening now is incredible.
Okay. Stepping back, though, when you're talking 1949, the creation of Idaho National Labs really stemmed from, like, can we create a lab to understand and harness nuclear energy, right, for commercial energy production purposes? And part of that came from, hey, we have an abundant source of water, right? Like, we need a lot of water and we need some space. We need some elbow room to figure this stuff out, because it is very, you know, you don't want people looking and watching everything you're doing. You're sitting right on top of an aquifer. We have an enormous amount of water. I think somebody told me that it was, if you stared at the Snake River without blinking, you would stare at it for 200 years as it flows by before you ran out of water in the aquifer. So, like, that's the magnitude of water that we're sitting on. You need a lot of water. And again, research. But one of the other things you need was like skilled labor. So to build out INL, obviously you deal with people that are working in the area. So the origins of INL really came from, like, look, these contractors going out to farms in Idaho and saying, like, hey, who can come help us build this lab? And then the second layer of real integration of employment was, all right, how many of them were smart? Right. And it's just an odd question. It's like, well, look, you're asking these people to build this lab. They're like, yeah, but we need people to work in the lab. And so the original workforce and nuclear operators of INL stemmed from essentially ag labor individuals who showed a propensity and capacity in nuclear energy. And then everybody just learned and you trained together. And that was the original workforce at INL.
It was a big part of it, you know, and by the way, you know, a key part, to be direct, was the remoteness of it. Right. And they were learning as they were going, and wanted to make sure that they weren't going to have a negative impact on people. And so having a very large site in a remote location was a key characteristic. Now it turns out everything went pretty well. So, you know, that wasn't
no problem.
But it wasn't quite as big of a, but they were trying to be prudent in that regard. And your point is absolutely correct. So, you know, you bring in engineers that understand nuclear physics and things like that, material science and so forth. But so much of the workforce that was mechanically inclined because of how they
Sure.
were raised and working in agriculture was a critical part of the workforce. It's still a critical part of our workforce today.
So when you talk about workforce today, this is kind of at the core of it. INL is a gigantic employer and you guys are hiring every day. And here, one of the greatest concerns, at least expressed to me by a lot of people, including, our governor and lieutenant governor, is how do we create jobs or make an economy that has jobs for Idaho youth so they don't have to move away? What do you need from Idaho? Like if I'm a parent of 3 boys, and if you're like, all right, Matt, your oldest is 13, for him to get a job either at 18 or if he goes to college at 22, this is what I need you to have him know or be able to do. What are those things?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just sort of frame it. So we're over 6,000, about 6,500 employees now. We've gone through a period of substantial growth. Now we won't grow like that forever, but we'll have to continue to hire substantially, even just to replace attrition, retirements, and so on. Because the work that we do is of so high demand, private sector companies are always recruiting our folks as well. And so we're always hiring quite a bit. Now, when people, it'd be easy answer would be like, oh yeah, we need more nuclear engineers. Okay, but that's actually not the case. We need people across the entire spectrum of what we do. So we need all the kind of STEM educated, if you will, nuclear engineers, material science, computer scientists, all those sort of folks. But what we need actually even more of is technicians, people that are operating the hot cells, people that are mechanically inclined, a variety of different crafts. You were there, so you see there's like construction going on all over the place. We need trained security guards because we have an important security force to protect our materials. So almost all of the trades and the various STEM educations are people that we're hiring.
So I was telling somebody the other day, I was chatting with you. I just started this nuclear series, and I was telling Richard, who's doing the nuclear series with me, that if the podcasting gig doesn't work out, I'm going straight to nuclear welding.
There you go.
Like it is one of those things. I mean, I think the Navy needs like 100,000 nuclear welders working on, or nuclear capable welders working on submarines and stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like, this is a trade. Yeah. Like you're getting into, it's welding, but it's so technical and it's so demanding and you need such a high level precision that there just are not those people in the United States currently. There aren't close to enough people to fill those. And like, that's the kind of stuff that you guys needed. I know.
Right. And also, being a laboratory, so we do research, development, and demonstration to enable and de-risk nuclear technologies, but that's not the end game. The end game is deployment. So what we're looking to see, and what actually this current administration is set as a target, is to quadruple nuclear power by 2050. That is a lot of building, okay? And so, yes, we're going to need engineers, but we're going to need trades across the entire spectrum to do that. That's probably my biggest concern is enough trades to actually do the building, as well as the supply chain that is needed to enable that building.
Material science is a gigantic factor here, right? Because ultimately you need materials that can handle extreme pressures and temperatures that, some exist and some don't. And even the ones that do exist, it's like, okay, in what quantity? You talk about supply chain. Do you guys have like a material science division at INL as well? Like people just sitting around figuring out different ways to make different alloys?
So we have material scientists across the entire R&D area, but from nuclear. So we're looking at different alloys, different high temperature alloys. Alloys that can withstand corrosion, for example, in a molten salt reactor, et cetera, high temperature, high gas pressures, things like that, things that you're alluding to. And of course, irradiation. Reactors have irradiation, so how are they going to withstand bombardment from neutrons and gamma rays and so forth over a period of time? How are they going to perform? Some of it's about finding the best material, but some of it's just trying to make sure we understand the lifetime of a material in a certain environment. But but material science is across everything. It's, we look at hydrogen production, that's a materials issue. We look at armoring. We make armor for a variety of different physical security things. That's materials. And so material science is just prevalent across everything that we do.
With nuclear and with the demand on these, do you have there are some companies that need a very specific workforce and they engage in like workforce training. They're like, hey man, I need, more people laying asphalt. I need more people doing this, whatever it might be, linemen, whatever it is. Does INL have an education arm that, you either provide that education yourself or you have like collaborations with universities and whatnot?
So we have sort of all of it. So again, that is not a straightforward answer.
Gotcha.
So, we're also looking at developing more people to go into STEM education. So we actually have a lot of outreach in the K through 12 area. We have a lot of partnerships with different universities, including colleges, College of Eastern Idaho for different trades. We need more technicians, as I mentioned. We need more radiation controls technicians, a variety of different fields where they don't already exist, which is in a variety of places. We work with those colleges to develop curriculum, and then in some cases even help teach that curriculum. Then even beyond that, if let's say you come on and you're working for us, in order to like operate one of our reactors, you've got to go through reactor operation training. So we actually we do that kind of training on our site. So it's really an all of the above.
What is a response? Okay, so there's I think it's dang it, man, I just had it. There's a specific area in Idaho that is producing a larger than average population of people going into medical field, right? And that got whittled down to, I think it's like Grangeville or something. That got whittled down to, somebody told me, they're like, okay, there's one doctor there that has all of his kids are going to medical school. They're either graduated or going into it. And he goes and works with a lot of these schools and volunteers and is really helping people see themselves as like, no, you can be a doctor. Like, trust me, like you can be a doctor. I know you didn't, maybe that wasn't on your radar, but like you can do it. And just that opening that door of possibility with those kids is this kind of thing that just builds on itself. It's like it builds. And then one person goes and then 10 people go and then 100 people go. And they're producing more with the same resources that were there before, right? They're just getting more kids to take the shot and more kids are taking it and being successful. So like, do you have, when you say you have outreach to K through 12, is that like, what does that actually look like? Because, like growing up, like I didn't grow up in like a super fancy area. In fact, it wasn't that great. And it's like, yeah, you'd see a poster on the wall. It's like, you can do, so it's like, I didn't care about the poster on the wall, but what it took in my life was really somebody that was a teacher at the school and like really engaged and invested in me. So like when you say that you have this outreach K through 12, what does that mean? What does that look like?
It's actually really consistent with what you described. And that, I mean,
a key is the poster thing? Or?
No.
Okay.
the actual discussion. The thing is helping people understand that this opportunity is actually there and that it's a realistic opportunity for them. And even talking to you today, hopefully when people are listening, they'll hear that, hey, maybe I could work at Idaho National Laboratory. There's something there for me. I don't have to be a PhD nuclear engineer for an opportunity at a national laboratory. We need all kinds of different capabilities. And so we engage a lot with middle schools, even grade schools, to just help kids understand that opportunity, that possibility resides, and it actually resides in Idaho. And I think that's sort of eye-opening in itself. And then continuing through and also continuing through with like internships and things like that to get people in to see that, hey, this is, I mean, my actually career started, or I'd say this career trajectory started with an internship at another national laboratory where I would have had no idea that this kind of career was available to me, and really opened my eyes. So trying to create those experiences.
What was the other lab?
Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee.
I was like, Lawrence Livermore.
Yeah, no.
It's like I live close by that. That's pretty cool. How many national labs are there?
17.
And you guys are essentially do you all collaborate and like share research across the board and then like, do peer reviewed studies and things?
Yes. We all have different mission spaces. There's a reason why we all, why there's 17.
Sure.
Some of us share more mission spaces and so tend to collaborate together more because we have common interests.
Sure.
All of us collaborate in terms of being Department of Energy laboratories, operating by the same rules, all those sort of things.
Okay. I don't know. I focus almost exclusively on Idaho, but when you talk about Department of Energy, I've heard criticism of past departments of energy and from different administrations essentially saying, look, they don't understand, right? Or they have policies that they're putting in place that are counter to increasing energy production with either, spent fuel rod recycling or just, Yucca Mountain for storage. Like there are all kinds of different policies that have essentially hampered, completely stopped, or just, looked in a different direction from producing nuclear energy. Like, what do you think about the current Department of Energy and what the directive is?
Yeah, so first of all, the Department of Energy is part of the administration.
Sure.
And so they take their guidance from there. The Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, is a cabinet member. And so there's a strong alliance there with whatever an administration is interested in. I could not be more happy with the level of support for nuclear energy in this administration. The previous administration was also very supportive. The energy demand growth and things that are coming together now result in a really unique moment. And then on top of that, the executive orders that were signed off in May that put urgency around nuclear energy demonstration and deployment has really created a ton of new opportunities for us.
I forgive my ignorance. I was not, like, I'll be honest, I don't follow a lot of the executive orders, and I certainly don't follow. Yeah, right. What came out, like, what specifically was he saying? Just like, look, we need to have proof, positive, demonstrations that we can roll this out starting like yesterday. Is that essentially the idea?
That's pretty close to it.
Ah.
Like I said, the previous administration was very supportive of nuclear energy as well. Not carbon emitting, base load power, proven technologies.
Right.
Challenges with the fact that we got out of building for quite a while. And so that, those need to be overcome so we can get back to building again. Probably a lot of people don't realize we have 94 reactors. I'll say exactly, 94 reactors operating across the country. Most of those reactors were built in the 70s and 80s. And so we haven't built a lot of new reactors in a while. So that's kind of the role of a federal government, is how are we going to get over that hump and start doing that again regularly to address the energy demands that we have going forward. So the previous administration was supportive of nuclear energy. This administration came in and sort of put their pedal to the metal, if you will, and really wanted to accelerate things. And so those 4 executive orders are very wide and ranging. And so reinvigorating the nuclear industry technology, nuclear for national security purposes, reforming the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, that's the commission that licenses nuclear systems, and also reforming the DOE research base for reactors. That's us, and putting really tight deadlines and expectations on urgent performance of new nuclear systems and commercial deployment of nuclear.
Man, it'd be wild if we started firing those up. You know what's interesting? The 94 reactors that have been going since the 70s and 80s. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in all that time, 0 loss of life from all of these reactors.
Correct.
0 carbon emission from all these reactors.
People would say not exactly 0.
Not exactly.
You got construction and concrete and things like that, and there's some limited emissions.
Well, those people are terrible.
But just
the other normal people that understand what I'm saying. And people that drive there in their cars to operate them, there's some carbon emission.
I'm sorry, an engineer, so I'm like, okay, not totally 0, but they are not emitting electricity. They're not emitting carbon emissions as they're operating. Correct.
And again, this boils down to the anxiety people have, essentially boils down to 3 major incidences. One in the United States that resulted in 0 loss of life, large economic downfall, 3 Mile Island. Right. And then you have Fukushima and Chernobyl. And it's like, okay, even with what's interesting about the Chernobyl one that I found out recently, that was the same style reactor. They had 10 other reactors that were like that. And the one that melted down was actually being operated incorrectly per the operation manual. They're like, don't go beneath 20% power generation. They're like, I wonder what would happen. Let's go 17 and hold it steady. And they do. And it's like, damn, it blew up, right? And like, legit, it blew up. And it was like, yeah, we told you not to do that. And they did it anyway, right? So you have those notable examples, but it's like, listen, it's kind of like a self-driving car. If somebody told you, hey, we've had self-driving cars since the 70s. There it goes. It has never been in a car accident. No one's ever died. I don't know what better way you could explain the efficacy with, by the way, 1970 technology, right? Like imagine that was before the Gordon Gekko cell phone, right? Yeah. Like the giant dumb thing, or like the thing in the trunk, so you have, there's just a shift in perspective that needs to happen. You know what else has blown me away? People are very anxious about nuclear technology. They're like, I don't know how nuclear works. It's like, okay, do you know how solar works? They're like, well, yeah, the sun. I'm like, I'm aware. There it is. But like, then do you know how it, and then, right? Or even like charcoal. Like, why is it that charcoal has to be close to other pieces of charcoal to keep burning? Right. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I don't know either. But like, it does.
You accept it and use it.
Yeah. Right. Like we have all of these things that absolutely are complex and have to work. And I have no idea how they work. It's like, why is nuclear any different? Like, I have a damn iPhone. Like, I don't know what goes on in the iPhone. Like, I'm not even asking anymore. Like, but these are just simple nuclear these are simple physical properties that, oh my gosh, it was so embarrassing. I had my guest Richard on, we were going over nuclear, and he's explaining enriching uranium.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what does enriching mean? And he's like, well, you're changing the ratio of, uranium 235 to 238. I'm like, what did you just say? So he had to break it down. He's like, all right, you get 100 pounds of uranium, and about 99.3% of that is going to be uranium 238, and about 0.7 is going to be 235. I was like, okay. He's like, so you need to separate those and then mix them again. But instead of being 0.7% 235, you need it to be about 20%. He's like, that's enriched uranium. I'm like, oh, and he's like, for nuclear military purposes, for not nuclear, but military operations like submarines, you want more like 95%. It lasts longer. You can make it a lot smaller. But that's the whole, I thought enriched uranium was like something right out of, I don't know, it was like Back to the Future, like 1.21 gigawatts or whatever the hell it was. Anyway, but
actually, you explained that quite well.
Well, thank you. But these are the types of things where it's like, I don't even know when you say enriched uranium, I literally think like folic acid and wheat. I'm like, oh, folic acid. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's so basic. You're like, no. It just doesn't occur in nature at this quantity. We just add in some of the less frequently occurring ingredient. You're like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
Right.
Anyway, so even beyond that, because INL doesn't just focus on nuclear research. Like, obviously that's a keystone piece of it. And by the way, quick question for you with power. We are about to experience a mass power, like they're opening up the drain on our power. It's just like we have data centers, we have micron expansion, but nationally, this is a problem. Are there any estimates on like how much more electricity we're going to need in the next 10 years?
There are, and it's I think the easiest way for me to say it is historic demand growth, things like we haven't seen in our lifetime, and it does vary regionally, across different parts of the country, but in the next 10 years, a lot of places are predicting up to 20% demand growth. So think about that. You got to get 20% more power, while a number of our power plants are aging out. Earlier you talked about energy abundance. We've shut down a lot of power over the last 10 years. And so we not only need to add power for the demand growth, we actually have to add power for the power that we've shut down. One of the things that's really exciting, you didn't ask about it, but let me go there.
Please listen. I don't know what the right questions are to ask.
Over most of my career, we've shut down perfectly good operating power plants because the markets didn't value them, and now we're actually restarting some of them. You mentioned 3 Mile Island. There were two reactors there, one that had the core melt and one that continued operating for many years afterwards. In fact, was just shut down a few years ago, and is being restarted right now by Constellation. That's a utility, and Microsoft. They want the power.
Wait, so that's why you have the 2 cooling towers at 3 Mile Island?
Sometimes, yes, there's multiple plants.
Okay.
Sometimes there'll even be 2 cooling towers per plant. So you can't just.
Okay. So it's not. Okay. But the bottom line is you had 2 reactors, one melted down, no loss of life. And the guys next door are like, sucks for those guys. I mean, just keep going, Ted. So
yes, the reactor could,
like without incidents. It's not like they're like, oh my gosh, this is a bad technology. We have to shut this down or this whole thing's going to happen again. They're like, whatever, man, just keep generating power. Like, that's terrible, but whatever.
Yeah. Yes.
Man, what a wild time. I did not know that.
And now we're going to restart it.
And when you talk about 20% demand increase, this is not like we need base load increase, right? Meaning we can't, unless battery technology and like intermittent power generation just skyrocketed in capacity, like we need power, like data centers.
Right.
Data centers don't turn off the lights at night.
Right.
Like maybe the janitor stops mopping. I don't know. But like the data centers are drawing power 24 hours a day. So like wind blowing, sun up, sun down, depending on what the water systems are doing, is like none of that matters to the data center. They are humming along and drawing. So you can like hit ChatGPT with whatever you want all day long, every day, nonstop. So when people are like, okay, let's just build more windmills or let's get more, I mean, hydro's tricky, but like classic renewables of let's say wind and solar. It's like, okay, first off, how could we get the 20% increase? And you need no interruption of electricity. Like that's the reality of the situation, right?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you just sort of nailed it. And it's not just AI data centers, it's manufacturing. If you've got a manufacturing plant, you don't want to just go, okay, we're just not going to operate it during these periods of time because there's no power. You need firm power and you need it consistently because you've got that capital investment that you're trying to recoup dollars on.
Isn't it like aluminum or scrap steel or something? Like they run those at night, right? Because they use
a lot of manufacturing is run 24/7.
Gosh, man, that's wild. I remember seeing a documentary years back about a scrap metal operation plant in, I think it was like Chicago or something. They had this gigantic, it's essentially like, looked like a tuning fork. And they're like, yeah, man, then we just run power through the whole thing and like everything melts. And you're like, you do? And they had to, this one in particular, like, yeah, we have to run it at night because we draw so much power that like if we did it during the day, everything would shut down. So they wait till like 1 a.m. They're like, hit the switch, and like all these sparks. But I mean, like that's the kind of industrial level energy that we need to reproduce like 1,000 times over.
Right, right. I mean, you mentioned Micron plant right outside here in Boise.
Yeah, man. I have Ed Lodge, the president of public utility, coming on, as well as the chief operating officer for Idaho Power. And yeah, and I'm hoping that I can get somebody from Micron to come on too, because like these are all really complex, right? And there's obviously we have a large residential power rate increase coming up. Why that's happening, who it's benefiting, who it's not benefiting, who's paying for it. Like all of these things are really, really important. And collectively as a community and society, we have to determine, okay, do we want the benefits of the expansion from say data centers and Micron, right? What benefits are we getting from Micron? Okay, what is that going to cost our power system and our energy grid? And then once we have that cost to the energy grid, what portion are we residents going to pay for it? And do we like that ROI? Is it worth it to us to take? And are we? Is our rate increase even reflective of something that's building out for somebody else? Or is this just reflective of, hey, we've had such growth here, we need to pay a little bit more, right? And by the way,
that's going to be a great one.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I'll send you a copy. Yep. But like, bottom line is, these are conversations that need to be had. Now, to be clear, the Ed Lodge from the Public Utility Commission, he didn't write the rules, and the individual coming from Idaho Power, he didn't write the rules either. So it's not even like a gotcha kind of thing. It's like neither of these people are responsible. They're just reporting this. These are the rule sets that we are operating under.
Correct. Right.
Man, what a wild time.
And, related to that, we have data centers that want to take firm power off the grid to power them. And the grid operators are going like, wait a minute, no way, because all these residential people are relying on that power. If you take that off the grid, we don't have a replacement for it. Or if we have a replacement for it, it's more expensive than that power. And all these things that have to be managed. It's pretty complicated.
Enter the small modular reactor. See? If you just get a molten salt small modular reactor battery in CUNA, we'd all be happy.
Yeah.
The CUNA wouldn't care at all. Nobody would even notice. Again, talking a lot about energy, but that's not like INL. As I was walking through, this was pretty wild. Going through some of the R&D areas, Liza, my guide, who was awesome, was like, hey, check this thing out. And I've messed around with insulation, and like I'm a real handy kind of fix-it guy. And she shows me this thing. I'm like, yeah, it looks like blowing insulation. I'm like, great. She's like, yeah, it's trash. I'm like, no, I don't think you're supposed to throw it away. Like I don't know where it goes. She was like, no, it's literally trash. And I guess the story went that she was telling me, researcher came in and kind of figured out like if they blended just the right amount of trash and blended it just right, obviously put disinfectants and whatnot. She was like, but that's literally raw trash. So we're talking diapers, we're talking old cell phones, take out the chips, and like take it, like all those different things, blend it all up. And it had a insulation rating and a fire retardant rating that was far superior to manufactured insulation. And, there's some, trademark that's getting made or patent. I'm not 100% sure what she was saying, but she was like, look, it's going like through the final stages of stuff. It's that kind of real science that's going on, because I thought about that for weeks. I'm like, who thought of this? Like, who thought to take a bunch of trash, like buy a pallet of trash, right? First off, who's the pallet of trash, broker? It's like, I'll take 2, thank you. And it's like, you get the trash, and then you're like, I wonder if we could like spray it with this stuff, treat it this way, blend it up, and then start. But that's at the core of like actual functional science that like a lot of people understand and benefits all of us. Like if we all of a sudden have an insulation that's derived from our waste products that's superior to all other insulations, it's not going to be good for the insulation companies, but it'll be good for everyone else, right?
100%. And that's one of the things that's so cool about a national laboratory. So a lot of that work started, we were doing work related to biomass and reusing biomass, waste products in the biospace for energy, for sustainable aviation fuel, researching what the opportunities look like. That basically, what is that? That's processing materials and putting it in a different form for a different purpose. And then the researchers are like, whoa, what could we do with municipal solid waste? Could we do something useful with that? And then, kind of, it's not a serial progression, but then, next thing is, wait a minute, it's basically kind of the same thing to grind up electronics equipment and recover the critical minerals out of recycled electronics. So these researchers use what they know and extend it to other purposes. And all three of those research areas and streams are resulting in valuable products.
Do you guys do anything with methane capture on dairies? Because I'm so interested.
We do a lot of things, but I'm not sure we do anything in that space.
I'm so interested in the
I'm sure some of our chemists will have some ideas.
Well, they already have these things, right? They're like gigantic tents that go over like the poo pile, like the lake or whatever you want to call it. And, speaking of reusing biomass, like I was at a dairy actually recently and they were showing me they're like, oh, this is like our big lake where every time we clear out the dairy, because they have the milking stations and stuff, they're like, we use a lot of water and it all flows to here. I'm like, oh, do you just let it like seep back into the ground? They're like, no, we do the opposite. So they make these man-made ponds using like bentonite clay, on the bottom. Yep. And then they also have to test them for efficacy without leaking. So like if they are leaking at all, they get in big trouble. Mm-hmm. And then they figure out a process to distribute that as natural fertilizer back across crops that this particular dairy operator was growing. And then of course the crops get harvested and then fed back to the cows. I'm like, okay, so the cows drop a patty or like go to the bathroom, whatever. It goes into this lake. You guys store it all, then shoot it back as fertilizer in some process, then harvest those crops and then feed them back to the cow. And he's like, that's right. Yep. I was like, wow, man. Yep. And again, you have methane release on that, but not your jam.
Yep.
Okay. What are the other, then speaking of biomass, what are the other things other than like insulation? Because are you guys literally taking it's like, okay, this is the community. This community produces this much stuff. Okay, we have, this many tons of garbage, this many tons of this many tons of that. Guys, here's all the stuff we're producing. Can somebody put these together in a way to figure out there's like some usable product here? And like you just start at a table like, well, I guess we could do this, or maybe we could. And like, is that the nature of how you address mass, just refuse coming out of municipalities?
Absolutely. Obviously that's plastics, wild. Glass, things like that can be done separately, installations, and how can you put these materials together for other products?
Hang on, there's a spider coming down from the ceiling. That'd be I should have let it go. That would have been a great clip. God, I robbed myself. I apologize. I had to get the spider. You were saying, like, yes, obviously glass, plastic, paper, but that's like, a lot of times those things come out in combinations with each other in manners that you can't really separate them effectively, right?
Well, then it comes down to economics and what are the techniques to be able to separate them in a way that makes economic sense.
So essentially you're just kind of figuring out, okay, there is raw material here. Do we have a high enough, essentially recycled and reused use that would justify the expense of harvesting
it.
Gotcha.
Right.
So the insulation, I presume, that's a good one.
It seems like it is. Yeah.
It seems like it is. Beyond that, what are things that are going on at INL? Because again, I got a 2-day tour, which was great. My head was like swimming with stuff. I didn't even know what questions to ask, but like, what are other things? Because obviously nuclear is a gigantic one that people talk about, but what are other cutting edge, aspects of INL's research?
Right. So there's a lot, and that's,
sure.
Sorry, it's just National Labs do a lot of things, but a key part that we haven't talked about is critical infrastructure security. We all rely on electricity just to come, light switches to go on. We've talked about power generation, whether that's with nuclear or other things, but you've got to get that power to us as users. That's going over transmissions lines, distribution systems. Those are all controlled by control systems that a lot of that is automatic and it's all connected to the internet. And so a key part of what we do is look at cybersecurity and physical security for critical infrastructure. Can you imagine if, for example, a city lost power because of a cyber attack on the electric grid and lost power for a week? It would be incredibly disruptive. And so a lot of our critical infrastructure, whether it's grid infrastructure or oil and gas pipelines or other things, that infrastructure was built out many years ago, still have control systems in them, but the vulnerabilities weren't necessarily as well understood.
Okay. This is the plot of a Die Hard movie, right? The fire sale or fire or whatever.
There's multiple
Right.
novels and yeah.
Yeah. So help me understand that, because we are susceptible. Our energy grids need to be hardened, not just to cyber threats, as in like a bad state actor. They need to be hardened towards, like solar flares or, electrical pulses. Like, what are things that we can do to preserve it? Because you essentially have, like, if power goes out, you essentially have 72 hours, right? Because, some areas might have pumps that keep water going, but pretty shortly after power goes out, if you don't have things restored within 72 hours and people don't have consistent sources of water, it's getting dark instantaneously, like dark, 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 because people will, essentially start doing anything because their life is on the line. What is on the front line of being able to help address that on a large scale?
So first of all, I would say vulnerable populations, you need backup power, right? So
Sure.
whether that's a plant, a hospital, or what have you. So to try to extend that, but that's not what you're talking about. But I just want to note that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different vulnerabilities. One are cyber attacks. So whether that's a relay tripping, damaging a transformer, taking lines out, disrupting power. So we focus a lot on that kind of stuff. So these are systems where through cyber means you could drive a physical action. Okay. When I say control system cybersecurity, that's what I'm referring to. You have, what people don't realize is there's control systems in your car. There's control
Sure.
systems in your probably microwave now, or your wash and dryer. It's like incredible throughout everything.
Well, it's like, just look at a sprinkler system, right?
Right.
Like you have the little thing. That's what turns on the sprinkler or turns it off, and you just turn it on at the box. I can even do it from my phone, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I got one of the Beehive controllers. I'm like, look, I got zone 2 going on right now.
And for that, if it stays on, somebody were to hack into there and turn it on, okay, no consequence. You don't care.
Right.
But if it's shutting down power to a hospital, you care a lot, right? So you mentioned solar flares and things. So it really comes down to, you could harden against everything, or you have to look at what are the most likely possibilities and what can you afford to harden against. And so cybersecurity, that's a pretty easy thing. Yeah, high likelihood, being interrogated regularly. So you absolutely need to harden against that. Physical security, in the past, we weren't as concerned about physical security of our grid infrastructure. But as you've seen over the news the last several years, people actually shooting transformers, taking physical actions against infrastructure to take down systems. So that's become more of an issue. In fact, some of our researchers that developed armor for military have taken that knowledge and that know-how to develop armor for physical infrastructure, particularly transformers and other related systems. So those are the biggest threats to our infrastructure that we contribute to protecting. So
in general, it sounds like people are dumb or bad, and we don't care about the solar flare. Kind of. From a probability standpoint.
So I'm not saying people are bad, by the way.
If you're shotgunning a transformer, you're not somebody I want to hang out with.
Maybe that particular individual, and there's a subset. It's a small percentage, thankfully. But
is it 0.7%? It's less than 1%.
I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, so it comes down to probabilities.
Okay.
Solar flare and EMP type of situations are things that we worry about, but they're very, very highly unlikely events. And so it comes down to, are you going to protect against everything? How likely is it? Is it worth the investment?
Okay. So man-made trauma is going to be the much more
likely.
Okay. And you literally have to build up physical infrastructure around it. So it's like, don't let the dude shoot it with the shotgun. And then you have real, what are the options? I know Secretary of State Phil McGrain was talking about at the state level, really building up cybersecurity to keep our election system, robust.
Another great example, right? That we've actually supported. Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because this is one of the areas that people get really intense about.
Right.
And I mean, the checks and balances, I did a tour of Ada County election system with County Clerk Trent Triple. Fantastic tour, fantastic individual, and seeing the checks and balances that they go through, essentially the one-way mechanism of like, when votes start coming in, man, like the votes never go back out to get manipulated once they start moving through this chain of possession and then going into the room to be actually counted. And then there's like the one flash drive provided by the state takes the tally into the one room in the entire building that's connected to the internet. And that is a one-way transmission to the Secretary of State's office. And then they're on the phone double checking that it's like, okay, I said 10,027. Did you receive 10,027? They're like, yes, we did. It's like, great, click. And then that flash drive goes in a bag and never goes back out anywhere. So like you have all of these checks and balances, but at the core of it, it's like, okay, but what happens when it gets to the Secretary of State's office? That's when people start, the next layer of anxiety of like, okay, now we've aggregated all the votes from all over the state to this one office. How are we protecting that office?
Yep. So in a weird way, this can sound jargony, but you've just described the approach we take to consequence-driven cyber-informed engineering. So with enough time, people are going to hack into any system. And so what is the most consequential? If they hack into your water sprinkling system, okay, not a big consequence. We don't really care.
There you go.
What you're just describing, especially as you get closer and closer to that endpoint, the consequences of manipulation are even more and more significant. Not to say that any election manipulation is bad, but if it's at the...
You mean tolerable? No,
none of it is tolerable.
There's no election manipulation that should be tolerated.
Tolerable, right. But if it's at one machine in one location and there's a manipulation, the consequences of that versus that thumb drive that you just mentioned that had all of it is very, very different. And so as you move through that chain, as you were just describing, the consequences to the outcome get significantly greater. Therefore, your defenses need to be significantly stronger.
Gotcha. So you essentially just increase the attention to the individual part, going from, say, voting machine to, county hub, down to like the one room, down to the Secretary of State. That's where the energy focuses on that.
Right. Focuses on the consequence.
Gotcha. And so then you guys are really focusing likely most of your energy for cyber attacks on the Secretary of State's office to defend against that at that particular time, right? And then it peters out to like, okay, these are things you can do on the county.
Yeah, and I use that for an analogy because there's you cannot protect everything 100%.
Right.
And so you really need to be focused where the vulnerability really lies. Different systems around the country are literally getting attacked millions of times a day. And so with enough time and enough resources, an adversary is going to get into a system. What can they access? And what are you protecting the sprinkler system? Who cares? The other stuff, yes, I've got to protect that better.
Gotcha.
And there's not infinite resources to protect everything the same.
There's not?
No.
Okay. Director, look, I know it's a working day for you. I greatly appreciate your time. Is there anything you'd like to say here at the end? And I do not want to cut you short. I just want to be sensitive to your time frame.
Yeah, so maybe just a couple quick things. You talked a little bit about us, the laboratory, being kind of in Idaho. A lot of people don't realize it. Thank you for having me, because I think the more people understand what we do, the significance of it, not just to the U.S., but beyond, whether that's nuclear energy, control system, cyber, all the different things we do, the more I hope Idaho will be proud that they have a national laboratory in their backyard. And actually, the more that citizens and kids will be interested in the opportunities, to work there and make a difference. And so that's so thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. Then the other thing I'll mention is back to the nuclear energy topic. I've been, I hate to sort of admit it, but I've been a nuclear engineer for over 30 years now. There was a significant period of time where we weren't building out nuclear power plants, where we were shutting plants down, as I alluded to. And it really did not look very bright for the future of nuclear energy in this country. And that is completely different today. So I hope your listeners, come away with some indications of that. I talked about the executive orders, but the private sector flow, because of the energy demand growth, is really making a huge difference right now. So it's really, really an exciting field. So I hope more people will think about going into it.
First off, thank you for all of that. And again, I know we got to go, but I would love if people were interested and you were good with it, I would love to start having people from like material science or, nuclear engineers or, fuel specialists or the technicians, whatever it might be, help people start understanding like this is the field.
What does it look like?
Right. Because it's kind of like my dad always wanted me to be a doctor. Sorry, Dad. It's like definitely not a doctor. But I didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's like, I want you to be a doctor. I'm like, okay, great. I thought doctor was like little black bag stethoscope. He's like, well, you could be like an orthopedic surgeon. He's like, it's kind of like Legos. I'm like, it is. He's like, yeah, but with bones. I was like, that's not Legos. That's a bone. And you know, so there are all these different specialties, but they're all part of the medical field. And understanding those different things, somebody might be like, oh yeah, that actually sounds great. Like that sounds wild or super cool or whatever it might be. I'd love to help kind of unpack like these are the specialists and this is the cutting edge stuff that they're doing, and it's all accessible. Like these people exist and they need more of them. So yeah, highlighting some of those would be pretty cool.
That's awesome. We have a whole bunch of it at the laboratory. I'm sure they'd love to be a part of this.
God bless it, man. Thank you for coming in, sir. And hopefully we can do it again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.